Alright guys, I'm trying to set something up. I want to listen to something, but I don't want to play it through the stream. I was thinking about playing it through the stream, but you know what? Nobody didn't want. Yeah, I'll play it through the stream. Yeah, okay. You're not worried about it. I could, you know, if this. I'm gonna listen to something by the Jolly Good Ginger. So, anyways, former Army interrogator points out lies and dog whistles at Charlie Kirk presser. So this is from 15 hours ago or something. Anyways, good stuff, fascinating. I'm starting it from the top. I wasn't going to play it on stream, then I decided to, then I'm back and forth. Anyways, to keep it simple, I'm going to play it. All right, and I'm just going to play some
Kash Patel, everyone.
This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, this is what happens when you let good cops be cops. We're going to debunk this bullshit that the FBI caught the shooter. We're going to debunk that. You see, I'm very big on what people say. I'm a former Army interrogator, and I was trained to listen to the words you say because the words you say are very important. So we're going to look at what Kash Patel said, what the governor of Utah said during this press conference, and we're going to debunk some shit, and we're going to analyze some shit. But first, let's listen to some more.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
No, you didn't. No. We're going to debunk this shooter was caught narrative. That's the governor of Utah, by the way. And after I'm finished debunking this he was caught narrative, we're going to look at some really disturbing shit that the governor said. In case you didn't watch this press conference, in case you missed it, there's some gross and alarming things that you need to see, but I'll jump into that in a minute. First, back to the lies.
In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. We got it. This is what happens when good cops be good cops. This is historic progress. Why don't we let the governor tell us what really happened? Because the shooter wasn't caught. Governor, tell us what really happened. Before I get into this full breakdown, please like the video, comment, and subscribe.
On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
Oh, so wait a minute. You didn't catch it. He confessed to a family member and they turned him in. He spent the first half of this press conference talking about how good cops are good cops and we did so much work. Kash Patel at one point went into all the assets they used. We used fixed wing assets. We were flying back and forth across the country. He talked about the vice president being there, the president being there, and all this wasted money, time, and effort. You didn't catch him. He turned himself in. You know what you also didn't do? You didn't mention that he was a cishet white man raised by Republican parents in a red state around guns. You didn't mention that. You didn't mention that he wasn't a left-leaning lunatic. In fact, you provided some uncorroborated evidence in this conference that will allow people to continue to think he is a left-leaning lunatic. You provided some unverified single-source information that played into that narrative, didn't you? Listen to what you did say. Let's play what you did say.
Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger.
So, this story hasn't been vetted. This is a single family member telling them about a single interaction they had with him. Now, this story could be true word for word. I'm not saying it's not. But this is irresponsible to report it this way because, first of all, let me say a few things. First of all, there are people in my own family who don't agree with me politically because they are MAGA and they misrepresent my views all the time. That's number one. When you're talking about a single source of information, you got to take into account personal opinion and personal interpretation. Second of all, not liking Charlie Kirk is not exclusive to being on the left. In fact, did you know that well-known white supremacist, well-known white nationalist Nick Fuentes has been beefing with Charlie Kirk over the last week on the internet? Nick Fuentes wants Charlie Kirk to debate him, and Charlie Kirk was refusing to do so, and they got this little online squabble. I won't go into all the details of it because it's not the point. The point is Nick Fuentes isn't far left. He's far right. And those who are around Nick Fuentes, who follow Nick Fuentes, who also don't like Charlie Kirk, they are not far left. But you didn't provide any alternative context like that, did you? You just provided this single family source's story because it plays into this far left narrative that he's politically motivated and doesn't like Charlie Kirk. People are going to say that's the left, but in fact, it could very well be the far right. You didn't say, hey, don't jump to conclusions, did you? You didn't verify this family member's story in any real way, did you? You just provided it because it plays into the narrative. You provided it so that people could recklessly jump to conclusions, just like you provided the information on the shell casings. Remember the shell casings that were supposed to be transgender, anti-fascist engravings? Let's see what you said about the shell casings.
Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital O-W-O, what's this, question mark."
How is that transgender, anti-fascist? No, that's actually this, if you go to the habitually online side of Reddit, you'll see that meme all over the place. It's a repeated phrase. It's an online meme. People who are habitually on that side of the internet just repeat it. It's like an inside joke kind of thing, but it's not transgender, anti-fascist. What else was on the shell casings?
Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point."
So, hey fascist, catch. That's probably anti-fascist, you're right. Does that mean it's the Antifa of the left that you always refer to? No, it doesn't mean that. Because the alternative context here is that there are plenty of people across the entire political spectrum who are against fascism. But you know that people will read that as anti-fascist, which will read that as Antifa, which will read that as left. You provided no alternative context because you are okay with people jumping to conclusions.
Up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols.
Up, right, down, down, down. That's video game language. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this other stuff is video game language. Hey, fascists, catch this. That's probably from a video game as well. I don't know, but because it's a company with up, right, down, 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 I must assume it is. This guy was probably a gamer.
A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao Ciao."
It's from a song. It's an anti-Nazi song, but that doesn't mean that it's from the left. You just know that if it plays into the anti-Nazi, anti-fascism narrative, that people will assume it's from the left, when again, there's plenty of people on the far right who are anti-Nazi, anti-fascist.
And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO."
Definitely on the left, right? Homophobic language, definitely on the left. That's obviously another habitually online Reddit joke that is not a left-leaning idea or a transgender anti-fascist idea. So where was, might I add, the transgender anti-fascism in any of that? The report came out that this was one officer's interpretation of the shell casing engravings, that they were transgender anti-fascists. Well, that officer was wrong. This is once again a person's singular interpretation that got leaked out. Why was it leaked out, by the way? Because Kash Patel was on X the whole time talking about everything happening on the goddamn investigation with full transparency. And by transparency, we mean leaking shit he shouldn't be leaking. But we also know that everything he leaked, that he was real-time posting on X, was actually just politically motivated, reckless posting to push this radical left narrative. 2 people, by the way, were incorrectly identified by Kash Patel. Two people incorrectly identified by Kash Patel during his transparency posting on X during this entire investigation. Nothing on these shell casings was anti-fascist transgenderism. Nope. Like, this is just made up. That's just made up to push the far left narrative. And listen, to emphasize this point, I want to look at some of the drivel that the Utah governor said in his closing speech in the press conference. Once the press conference was coming to an end, he got up to the microphone and gave this little fucking speech. He got on the mic and he had this fake catch in his throat like he was sad about to cry. The whole time he was speaking as if he was about to cry. It was cringe as fuck to watch. And he just piss poor acting. But he goes on about being angry. Watch this.
Over the last 48 hours, I have been as angry as I have ever been. As sad as I have ever been.
As sad as I've ever been. I've never been so angry in life. So sad in my life. But then as he continues this I'm so sad, so angry performance, he says he found strength. Now, you can't make this shit up. He found strength in the words of Charlie Kirk. I mean, you talk about trying to make this guy a deity. They're trying to make Charlie Kirk Jesus Christ now. I found strength in the words of Charlie. What? You can't make this shit up. Watch.
As anger pushed me to the brink, it was actually Charlie's words that pulled me back. I'd like to share some of those. And specifically right now, if I could, I need to talk to the young people in our state.
Shut up. First of all, I'm not letting him play Charlie Kirk's words. I'll just tell you, it's blah, blah, blah. He goes on to talk about how young people loved Charlie, but some people didn't love Charlie. Some young people hated Charlie. But Charlie was still brave enough to go into their community and speak with them because he was a champion of free speech. Then he reads these 3 or 4 quotes from Charlie Kirk that basically say, if we don't have free speech, we have nothing. What, man? Listen, I refuse to play into this mischaracterization of Charlie Kirk as some champion of free speech, some American hero. No, he was a bigot who spread hateful ideology. Okay? He said that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. That's been disproven, is not true, but it played into a racial narrative. He said that gun deaths were necessary. So while children were getting shot in school, he said that was necessary to keep the Second Amendment. He said we should bring back public executions. He did not apologize. He was unapologetically cool with bringing back public executions. There's a long list of things that Charlie Kirk said that were completely divisive, completely gross, completely motivated by racial narratives. To make him out as this great American hero of champion of free speech is attempting to erase all the hate and awful things he said and to deify him. But listen, the performance didn't stop there. The governor then goes on to be fake sad about the shooter being from Utah and then brings out a bunch of racist dog whistles. I really want you to listen to this part right here.
For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us, that somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country.
Yeah, of course you thought that. Well, quickly, I'm going to jump in here. He's praying that they're from a blue state or out of country so he can play into the blue state narrative or the xenophobic foreign terror narrative. That's what he was praying for. Okay? That's what he means by that.
Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I hoped for, just because I thought it would make it easier on us if we could just say, hey, we don't do that here.
It would make it easier on us if we could just say we don't do that here. This is white blindness. I call this white blindness because they refuse to take any accountability. He wants to push the narrative of we, the good old people in Utah, the white folk, don't do this. But see, right now, there's evidence right in his face that you do this. There's evidence right in your face that it is white people, cishet white people doing this. It is evidence right in your face that it's not a blue state terrorist or an out-of-country terrorist, that it's your own people. The call's coming from inside the house. And you're sad about that, rather than just taking accountability and acknowledging it. You would rather just be sad about it.
But it did happen here, and it was one of us. But I want you to look at how Utahns reacted the last 2 nights. There was no rioting. There was no looting. There were no cars set on fire. There's no violence.
Imagine that. Imagine going from it was one of us, and rather than taking accountability for that and addressing that and having some introspection, he found a way to immediately jump as fast as possible to these racist dog whistles, rioting, looting, cars burning. These are the same language that's been recycled from the right forever, and they're basically, he's referencing the Black Lives Matter protests. They mischaracterize these protests as being riots and looting and burning cities and burning cars, when that's not true. That's a mischaracterization of the Black Lives Matter protest. But also, let's be abundantly clear. When these protests were happening, when they were protesting the murder of people like George Floyd, that Charlie Kirk mischaracterized as having died of a drug overdose when he was in fact murdered by Derek Chauvin. It's ironic you bring it up. But when they were protesting those murders, it's because historically those murders continue to happen over and over and over and over without any accountability. And there comes a point where like, enough of this, it has to stop. However, this type of murder that just happened, the Charlie Kirk assassination, this white-on-white crime that just happened, there's no historical context where that just happens over and over and over without justice and accountability. One thing the good white people of Utah could take comfort in, and the white people of this country could take comfort in, was that there was going to be justice when and if the guy was caught. Because anytime you kill a white person, especially a well-known rich white person, there's going to be some accountability. So why would anybody need to protest? This is an absolute false equivalency and a mischaracterization just to get a dog whistle out. It was gross and it was also loud. And then he says this.
There were vigils and prayers and people coming together to share the humanity.
Is that a fact? There was people and prayers and vigils. No, there was HBCUs across the country being threatened. The shooter was white. The shooter was a cishet white male. There was HBCUs across the campuses across the country receiving threats. There was people all across social media. I can play you video after video after video declaring war on the left, revenge in the left. This was a radical left. We need to get together and as offline and come up with a plan to avenge Charlie. That's what's happening, and you're just skipping over that. You don't even want to talk about that. There was a bomb threat made to the DNC. There was a website made to dox people that others felt like their online reactions were too cold or too insensitive, and so they decided to dox them on a website. You don't talk about that. The director of the FBI doesn't talk about this. The governor doesn't talk about this. The president didn't go on Fox News this morning and talk about this. Nope. It's just pushing the radical left narrative. Why are none of the leadership in this country doing anything to chill the temperature? Why are they instead feeding into this radical left narrative, despite cisgendered white Mormon raised by Republican parents in a red state who did this not being radical left at all? Why? We all know why. They have an agenda. They have an agenda. And I'm going to tell you something. This agenda needs to raise alarms and red flags for you if it hasn't already. The president, the director of the FBI, the governor of Utah, the leadership of this country are purposely and intentionally stoking the flames of civil unrest in our country, and they have no intention, none, of bringing the temperature down. This is dangerous, and I don't see them changing their ways because they see this as a way to silence opposition and seize full autocratic power.
Yes. Sweet. That was awesome. That was one of my best deliberate goals ever. Ah, shit. Oh. Shit. Come on. Uh, Oh, that sucks. Try it again. Okay. Bummer. A little too aggressive there. Group. Group. Damn it. Oh. Damn it. I can't freaking not make that hit at that wall. Dang it. I was stuck in that bar. Oh, he hit me too. Come on, kick it out. Kick it out. Fuck. He had the boost. I guess I still have boost, but fuck. Ah, come on. Shit. Ah. I cannot get a freaking shot in this whole game. What the hell? Come on. I hate this game. I used to love this. This is stupid though. Come on, man. I'll go another game. I'm just trying to get a swoosh goal out of this. It might not be worth it. I'll lose another one in a row. I think I'll just call it. I'm trying to get the swoosh goal.
Charlie Kirk was just taken out by a meme-obsessed, radicalized young white man. And Nick Fuentes is getting nervous. Fuentes just rushed to issue statements condemning his followers who ever pick up weapons, which tells me that he knows that eyes are on him right now. To understand why this matters, you need to know about Charlie Kirk's long feud with Nick Fuentes and his so-called Groyper army. Back in 2019, Fuentes' followers, the Groypers, they launched what became known as the Groyper Wars. They targeted Kirk and his organization, Turning Point USA. At public events, they would heckle him, disrupt his speeches, and they accused him of being a sellout. Their issue? They thought that Kirk was too soft, too establishment, too willing to play politics instead of going full white nationalist like Fuentes and the Groypers. Kirk, through Turning Point USA, represented the institutional face of MAGA youth organizing, pro-Trump, but still within the guardrails of mainstream conservatism. Fuentes positioned himself as the authentic voice of the far right, pushing conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, and openly trafficking in anti-Jewish hate. And doing that, he built a cult around himself. The Groyper Wars were about who would control the next generation of far-right activists. Now, evidence suggests that Kirk's assassin might have been a Groyper, a follower of Fuentes. That's why Fuentes was quick to put out a statement condemning violence, because he knows he's in the spotlight. He knows that law enforcement, the media, and the Republican Party, the MAGA Republican Party, are watching. Here's where Trump comes in. Trump has always relied on Kirk as one of his most loyal propagandists. But he's also openly flirted with Fuentes, meeting him after January 6th, refusing to fully denounce him, and letting figures like Laura Loomer, who's allied with Fuentes, stay close. Trump thrives on playing both sides of this really dangerous coalition. The result is a cycle of violence. Kirk normalized political violence through Turning Point USA and promoting dangerous conspiracy theories about things like a stolen election in 2020. While both Kirk and Fuentes have pushed dangerous conspiracy theories that inspire vigilantes and people who go into shopping malls, movie theaters, Walmarts, schools, and do terrible things, Kirk had only in the last few years really started to lurch much further to the right, to get closer to Fuentes. And Trump benefits from both streams of loyalty, no matter how bloody the consequences. What do we do now? We make sure that MAGA's attention stays focused on Fuentes. We keep the wedge open. Every Republican politician should be forced to answer, do you stand with Nick Fuentes? Or will you denounce him and impose real, serious legal consequences on him, his movement, and his allies like Laura Loomer, who still has regular access to the President of the United States, Donald Trump? Our objective here is clear. Keep MAGA's rage turned inward, so it doesn't fuel more vigilante or state-enforced violence against vulnerable communities. If we can drive that wedge, we can buy time and space to keep organizing,
Charlie Kirk never had a kind word to say about me in his life. Now that he has died, I'll say some kind words about him. Although I didn't agree with him, I considered him a part of the political establishment. In many ways, I considered him part of the problem. In spite of that, it is undeniable that he was a towering figure in American conservatism. It's undeniable.
Welcome back to another Base Lore video. I'm the Lore Man. Guys, tonight just feels different. I have 6 clips here for you today of Nick Fuentes reacting to the death of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, love him or hate him, was gunned down in cold blood, and Nick Fuentes steps up as this powerhouse and sets everyone in the conservative movement right. It's almost like he is stepping up now and aligning himself as the new leader of the right. And make sure you guys subscribe, because I'm going to be dropping a few videos today, several videos of Nick Fuentes not just reacting to Charlie Kirk's death, but also his call to action and what we need to do moving forward. You know, Nick really stepped up as a leader, and his message is presidential. I think this is one of the most historical speeches he's ever given. So let's get into it.
But as I said yesterday, like many of you, I got the alert from a friend of mine who I believe was either at the event or had friends at the event at UVU in Utah. A friend of mine texted me and said, Charlie has been shot. I said, Charlie Kirk? They said, yes. And we watched it unfold live. We're still getting updates. We don't know exactly what transpired. And again, we'll get into some of that as well. Some of the uncertainties and unanswered questions. But I am devastated and legitimately affected and struck viscerally. Such a sensational video, images, such an unspeakable, horrible tragedy, and I literally had to take a day to collect myself. Normally, this is a current events show. I'm live every night, and I discuss the news of the day, and I've been there through many of the big developments over the years. Same day, January 6th, Trump assassination attempt, the elections, the pandemic. But this one was different, and I think everybody feels that way about it. It felt like a nightmare. That's the only way that I can accurately describe it, actually. Throughout the entire day yesterday, I just could not process it. It did not sink in. It still hasn't fully sunk in. Like I said earlier, you say those words, the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk. I watched his Wikipedia page go from Charlie Kirk is to Charlie Kirk was. It doesn't feel real. It feels like a nightmare that we'll never wake up from. And I say that as somebody who was not even a fan, not a friend, and actually an adversary, a foe. I can only imagine what his friends, his colleagues, and especially his wife, his young children, you can only imagine what they're going through.
Yeah, it's very sad. And when a man who called Kirk his foe admits that this feels like a nightmare, it just shows you the gravity of the situation. But guys, here the tone shifts. You can hear the urgency, almost a call to arms for the next generation, because Kirk's death left a void that, just can't be ignored. Let's get into this one.
What happened yesterday is still so raw and so sensitive. The country is profoundly affected, at least some of it is. We'll talk about that too. And so tonight I'm going to try to the best of my ability, carry out my responsibility. I believe, and I think you know, that I'm somebody that many of the young people, young conservatives, are looking up to. I have a lot of credibility with the far right, the radical right. And throughout his career, Charlie Kirk always characterized me as a troll. I don't say that with any malice at this point in time, but that's what he said. And many in Turning Point USA said that I and my followers are nihilistic. We only want destruction. And I think that I have an obligation to the country. I think I have an obligation to God. I think I have an obligation to all of you. I think I have responsibility to prove that that is not true. It's not about me, but now that it is the morning after, the day has dawned where Charlie Kirk is now dead at the hands of some unknown attacker. It is our responsibility, mine and all of ours, to step up and to get serious. To the extent that politics was fun or we took it lightly, I think we now realize it just got very real. It's been real. People talk about a civil war. They say a war is coming. Some say we're already in one. We have an obligation now. The leaders, the spokesmen, the men, the young men, the elderly men, we have an obligation to lead.
Yeah, and this part hits even harder because he calls it a watershed moment, a turning point that could change everything. And so I'm going to get into this next clip.
Everybody's very emotional. Everybody is whipped up, and rightfully so, justifiably so. People are furious. I don't know that the left fully understands that. I don't know that normies fully understand that. People are absolutely beside themselves. I've never seen the right wing more angry, more furious, and this has been building. Here we are today, the day after Charlie Kirk has been killed, but we're starting here in the middle of the story. It's been going on for over a decade, and these things compound over time, and they accumulate. And I, like everybody else, recognize that this could potentially be a watershed moment. This is a ripple effect. We may look back in time and see a chain reaction, an inexorable chain reaction that leads to nothing other than destruction, devastation, bloodshed, misery. I don't think it's crazy to say millions of dead bodies. And we must have the prudence. We must have the confidence in our convictions, in our faith in God. This is the test. It's easy to believe in prayer when things are easy. It's easy to believe in God, mercy, forgiveness, temperance when things are easy. It's when things are hard, when they're confusing, when we feel justifiably angry, wrathful, prideful. That's the test. That's when it counts. And that is when mature people, and I recognize the folly in me saying that. I don't consider myself an extremely mature person. I think I'm a frivolous person in many ways. But it's an obligation for all of us to grow up now and recognize the gravity of the situation we're in, the peril that we're all in. And we have to ask ourselves, what are our intentions? We have to set them intentionally. We have to set them in alignment with God, with the gospel. We have to think not just about the present moment and what we're feeling, but about the long term, the good of our country, the good of our fellow countrymen,
I'll take
both
the
the
carry
people
there.
we agree with and disagree with, our children, our progeny. And we have to think about that moment before God. We have to think about our moment before God in judgment.
And notice the caution here. I mean, despite the chaos, the anger, he warns against violence. That restraint kind of tells you how dangerous and unstable this moment really is. Got another clip here for you guys. I'm going to play it now.
And people, guided perhaps by good intentions or righteous indignation, become unwitting instruments of forces beyond their control, beyond their understanding. They become pawns in a larger game. And so, in order for us not to be agents of evil, a supernatural evil, a worldly evil, in order for us not to be instrumentalized by sophisticated and powerful forces that would use this tragedy to manipulate society for its own ends, in order to save our souls from the kind of wrath, anger, vengefulness that will surely land us a seat in hell, I would first say, before I say anything else, especially to the young people, vengefulness. I would first say, before I say anything else, especially to the young people, the adolescents, that I understand how you feel. Lay down your arms. Those that live by the sword will perish by the sword. Remember what Christ said. This is our cup to drink from, all of us. Death, suffering, martyrdom in some cases. It's all part of it. It's all part of life. And not to be fatalistic and not to minimize it, but as a Christian, we can't always talk about the prosperity gospel. We can't always talk about making money or prosperity and kumbaya. We also have to talk about the other side of things, which is that we have a Lord and Savior that was crucified on the cross by our sins, by our own iniquities, all of us. And not just the killers and the scoundrels and not just the obviously evil people, but also sometimes ourselves. Assuredly, everybody, you and I, everybody. So we have to take those things into consideration. We have to be humble about these things. And that's just a word of caution. That's me trying to do my best to be responsible here before we get into the larger subject.
It's true. I don't believe violence is the way forward. This is where you feel the weight. You know, an adversary giving a eulogy, calling Kirk a towering figure. That right there is respect, and that's grief that cuts deep. So let's get into this last clip here.
He was my opponent, but I would never wish death upon him or anything like that. And Charlie Kirk never had a kind word to say about me in his life. Now that he has died, I'll say some kind words about him. Although I didn't agree with him, I considered him a part of the political establishment. In many ways, I considered him part of the problem. In spite of that, it is undeniable that he was a towering figure in American conservatism. It's undeniable. He was ambitious. He was a hard worker. He did things I cannot do. A lot of people said after his passing, I saw some people make oblique references to it. They said, well, if Charlie Kirk was assassinated, now the far right will step up. I don't know that there's anyone that could fill his shoes. I don't know that there's anyone that can do what he did. He died at 31 years old and left a legacy that many people could not achieve in many lifetimes. He hosted a show 3 hours a day. He went and faced down his enemies in debates.
Yes. That was,
He would
oh,
take
I
on
don't know,
almost
they hit it.
any challengers. I say almost
I don't know
because
if I
he
got my
wouldn't
first
debate
goal
me,
or
of
if they've
course,
hit
but
it, messed it up.
nevertheless, would debate anybody, anywhere, stare them down, and people don't know how difficult that is. He would sit there for hours on any subject, and then he would return home from the command center and direct the largest youth organization, the most ambitious project in conservative politics maybe ever, and he did it all before the age of 31. An absolutely brilliant, sharp, fierce warrior for his values and his beliefs. And as I said, I disagreed with them strongly. I'll make no bones about that, and that hasn't changed. But you have to admire that this was a fighter, this was a worker, this was a champion, and above all else, maybe this is what I respected about him the most. We had our disagreements. Where we did agree is that he would go to these college campuses and proclaim the name of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is why he was killed. Everyone will be persecuted for the sake of Jesus Christ. Anyone, everyone, fighting and winning that spiritual battle for Christ and for his kingdom will be persecuted for his sake. And I don't believe Charlie Kirk was any different.
That was probably one of the most touching speeches I've seen him give, and I've watched a lot of his content. Guys, this assassination isn't about just one man, it's about what comes next. It's about the future of America, the escalating violence, the fact that none of us are safe from the chaos being unleashed. Even rivals are grieving tonight, because deep down we know this is bigger than politics at this point. And guys, if you're watching this, you know it too, obviously. The mainstream will try to bury the story, or worse, twist it into some kind of agenda, but we obviously won't believe it. We're awake, we're paying attention, and we refuse to look away. So guys, make sure you hit that like button, comment. I'm going to be dropping a few more videos today on this subject from his recent show last night. Really appreciate you guys leaving a comment, subscribing. We'll see you in a couple hours for the next video.
I said I'm gonna code for that, but all right. Well, that's gonna wrap it up here for now. Catch you all later.